It is the weekend midnight of March 31st, 2018, and a forest guard in the Kanha National Park of central India is moving through the last stretch of his patrol under a weak beam of torchlight. Up until now, everything had been pretty much routine. But, all of a sudden, his beam of light crashed into what appeared to be a mound of sand or a fallen trunk lying in the middle of the trail. As the guard moves closer to take a keen look, his heart drops like a stone when he realizes it's not a mound, but a massive striped figure. It is a tiger, the biggest of big game predators. For a moment, it feels like his death is standing in front of him. But a second later, another realization hits him. The killer cat is actually lying dead on the trail. A tiger dead in a protected sanctuary, the word spreads like wildfire. The next morning, the area is cordoned off like a crime scene, and the body is sent for an autopsy. Around this region, the probable causes of animals being killed are usually electrocution from live fences or poisoning. But the reports would reveal something completely different and downright shocking. There were no burn marks consistent with a live wire or toxins that could predict the poisoning. Instead, the body bore the brutal signs of a violent confrontation. Deep trauma, slash wounds, gored flesh and bones. This was no silent death. This had been a brawl. A brawl with a creature nasty enough to put the deadliest of all cats to death, armed with the hooked, extremely sharp tusks that can grow nearly the length of a human forearm and built on a frame weighing up to 770 pounds. When this tank-like monster crashes into its victim, it doesn't matter if you're a killer feline or a full-grown bear. The impact is like a machete strapped to a battering ram, coming at you with bone-splintering force. Meet the bulldozer pig, the wild boar. When you get married, choose a place with no wild boar. Unlike most popular Asian and European cultures, where boars are often seen as symbols of prosperity and good fortune, in rural Japan, young men approaching the age of marriage have historically been warned with this saying that invokes the boar in a far darker sense, and there is a very unsettling reason behind it. Wild boars have earned nicknames like the king of pests or ecological zombies because of the scale of destruction they unleash on crops and farmland. The most chilling example of this goes back to 1749 in the city of Hachinohe, Japan. Farmers there were already having a tough time financially and decided to switch to soybean cash crops to stay afloat. But to do that, they had to clear out big chunks of forest. However, once the trees were gone, what they were left with was thick brush and root-packed land, which was basically a 5-star setup for wild boar numbers to explode. What followed wasn't just a bad harvest, but a total agricultural collapse. The swelling boar population bulldozed through fields, tore up planted crops, raided whatever was left standing, and stripped the land down to nothing. It spiraled into what later became known as the wild boar famine, a disaster that ended up killing nearly 3,000 people. There is, however, an even more disturbing context behind this, and we'll get to that shortly, but first, these so-called zombie pigs deserve a proper introduction. Sus scrofa, commonly known as the wild boar, wild swine, common wild pig, or just wild pig, is one of the most widely distributed mammals on the planet. Originally native across Asia, North Africa, and Europe, but having been introduced into the Americas and Oceania as well. From mountains to alpine regions rising several thousand feet high, to dense forests, open grasslands, swamps, and even large parts of human settlements, these hulking, iron-built beasts have proven that they can survive almost anywhere in nearly any condition, except for year-round snow-covered regions where their short, stocky legs struggle to push through the drifts. On a massive frame that can reach anywhere from 130 pounds to an upward of 770 pounds, based on region and gender, these relatively small legs do look like an evolutionary disadvantage, but in reality, they are anything but that. Not only can a wild boar still run at breakneck speeds of up to 31 miles per hour, even for short bursts, and jump as high as 5 feet in the air, The small legs beneath their tank-like bodies lower their center of gravity to help prevent toppling, which would otherwise be a greater risk if too much weight were supported on long legs. Apart from that, the relatively smaller height because of these legs helps the boar keep its snout near the soil almost constantly. This is important because a major part of its diet comes from digging up food sources from under the soil and using that massive snout, which is 1,000 times more sensitive to smell than that of humans. The wild boar can detect food buried at 25 feet underground or as far as 7 miles away. After the scent is detected, the animal starts digging the soil in massive chunks like a crane at work. The region behind its shoulder blades rises to form a pronounced muscular hump made of fortified bone and extremely dense muscle fibers. Paired with a neck that is short and thick to the point of being nearly immobile, this whole structure doesn't just stabilize the spine and act as a shock absorber, it also turns the entire upper body into a compact lever system that can channel an enormous amount of force straight into the head and snout. The head itself takes up about 1/3 of the body's total length, and with 2 protruding tusks and a heavily reinforced cartilaginous snout in front of it, it acts like a combined plow that can dig up virtually any surface within minutes, despite reaching depths of several feet, and can overturn rocks weighing more than 110 pounds. A small group of these massive pigs like this can tear up 1 to 2 football fields of land in a single night, with one boar capable of rooting through more than 40 football fields in a year. Because of its very small, deep-set eyes, a wild boar can barely make out objects 30 to 50 feet away and doesn't see colors, but its insane sense of smell more than makes up for that, and what's left is covered by its large, highly sensitive ears. Not only can a wild boar pinpoint the exact direction of an incoming sound, but it can also pick out everyday noises, like maybe a leaf rustling, from anything unusual, even as faint as a human whisper, up to 300 feet away. Despite being highly versatile omnivores, almost on the same level as humans, most of their diet across habitats comes from roots and tubers dug straight out of the ground throughout the year. This digging comes in handy in snowy regions too, where they have to root around for fallen berries, seeds, or nuts under the snow and eat them when they're ripe. Boars living near humans can also make a living off piles of garbage, along with leaves, twigs, and shoots. A medium-sized wild boar needs roughly 4,500 calories each day to sustain itself. To reach that number, it spends the better part of the day on its feet, covering ground and constantly foraging for modest returns from plant matter. A small but significant 5 to 10% of this intake comes from an animal source. And when it's that part of its diet, the wild boar gets really wild. The following footage captures one of the rarest events ever caught on camera. After a heavy downpour in Yala National Park in Sri Lanka on Christmas of 2010, this group of wild boars was seen feasting on a freshly killed deer. Ripping open its abdomen, the leader of the pack starts devouring the entrails first, while the rest of the group, grunting and snapping with hunger, have no choice but to wait behind until he's done. The footage alone doesn't tell the full story of how the hunt would have gone down, but a similar incident reported in the Journal of the Bombay Natural History Society gives a detailed account of a herd of wild boars mercilessly killing and eating a spotted deer, or what's also called a kaital. According to the report, 2 wildlife experts were at a national park in central India on April 12, 2006, when they spotted a herd of 6 to 7 kaital grazing near a waterhole. A short while later, a wave of panic ran through the herd as a sounder of more than 10 wild boars arrived. The encounter quickly turned violent. One massive female boar charged at the deer herd, isolating an adult female, while 2 other boars circled to block her escape. The trio then held the helpless deer down and, for 15 long minutes, rammed and stabbed her to death with their massive snouts and bulging canines. Meanwhile, this nasty fella didn't have to do all the legwork. He found a dead deer lying out in the open and went straight in for the feast. Using his massive hooves and those deadly canines, the relentless creature rips into the rotting meat and gulps it down like it's the best damn meal he'd ever have. Its canines can reach their peak over 18 inches, though much of that length is embedded in the gum line, giving them incredible leverage and strength from the anchor point. Male boars even have a hollow tusk in their upper lip that acts like an in-house knife sharpener, constantly keeping those nasty appendages razor sharp. Beyond feeding on dead or alive deer, These massive pigs have also been known to prey on rabbits, hares, muskrats, and the eggs and chicks of birds like galliforms and herons. They can even take down small to medium-sized calves, lambs, and other livestock, and in some regions, some of the most aggressive primates. In areas where they share water or lake boundaries, these pigs will feast on fish like carp and Caspian roach. Above everything, a wild boar is one of only 4 mammals known to science that are practically immune to snake venom. Not only can they survive snake bites without any ill effect and eat them quite comfortably, but the genetic mutation that gives them this immunity also allows them to safely consume several types of extremely poisonous plants as if they were normal food. So with a diet that ranges from meager roots buried several feet underground, even if they're poisonous, to animals and birds of all kinds, wild boars become the very few species on the planet that can survive just about anywhere. And while that's great news for the boars themselves, it's anything but for the humans. In search of food, these so-called king of pests, or ecological zombies, trample crucial crops, strip nutrients from the soil, pollute water sources with feces to dangerous levels, and feed directly on the ground-growing fruits and vegetables. The more they eat, the faster their colonies grow, spreading like a disease and literally turning entire ecosystems upside down. Studies suggest wild boars have directly caused alarming declines in over 300 plant and animal species, pushing some to the brink of extinction. They're digging and rooting disturbed soil layers worldwide that contribute to carbon emissions equivalent to roughly 1.1 million passenger vehicles every year. Boars that feed on human garbage near settlements grow up to be 35% heavier than their forest counterparts and are responsible for numerous road accidents annually. While the famine of Hachinohe was one historic example, even today these animals trigger several localized famines. They not only destroy crops, but wreck farmland so badly that farmers are often forced to abandon it entirely. The worst effect of all, however, comes from direct confrontations between humans and these wild pigs. From data collected between 2000 and 2019, a total of 1,532 wild boar attacks were reported worldwide, resulting in 172 human fatalities, averaging about 8.6 deaths a year. The animal usually attacks by charging and driving its tusks straight at the victim, with most injuries landing on the thighs. Once the first strike is over, the boar steps back, reassesses, and then attacks again if the victim is still moving, only stopping when the person is completely incapacitated. The earliest accounts of such brutal encounters go back to the writings of ancient Greeks and Romans. In Greek mythology, figures like Odysseus and Adonis are said to have been attacked by wild boars, with Adonis even killed during that encounter. Of course, we know these characters are fictional, but the fact that boar attacks appear in such centuries-old writings shows that these animals were just as much of a problem for humans back then as they are today. On January 31st, 2018, one of the most terrifying wild boar attacks was caught on a street security camera in a small village of southwestern China. In the grainy, pixelated footage, a 66-year-old man named Zhang can be seen pinned beneath a massive boar, thrashing and twisting as his neighbor swings with a shovel over and over, trying to pry the beast off, but it barely flinches. Hearing the commotion, Zhang's daughter-in-law rushes out of the house, trying to drive the monster away too, but the boar spins with shocking speed, slamming into her once, then again, sending her flying, before turning back and starting to plow through anything nearby. Snipers eventually took down that beast, but the damage was already done. Zhang had suffered severe slash wounds and bled out on the spot, while his daughter-in-law survived, barely, with serious injuries. An incident like that happened in a rural village of Belarus in August 2025, where a wild boar being kept on a private farm by a resident escaped its enclosure and rammed into a 44-year-old bystander, goring him to death brutally. Similarly, on February 13, 2026, a 55-year-old plantation worker was killed by a wild boar in southwestern India, leading to compensation announcements for the family. India surprisingly accounts for 51% of global wild boar attacks annually. Due to this extreme danger and an almost immortal population of wild boars, farmers and even official pest control authorities all over the world are left with no choice but to kill these animals. Every year, millions of wild boars are selectively slaughtered to keep their numbers in check, which, by the way, still barely makes a dent. With no exact data on how many of them exist, the IUCN Red List of Endangered Species classifies their population as least concern, which, believe it or not, is actually very concerning. Speaking of numbers, even though most of their breeding season lasts only a month and a half each year, under ideal conditions, which are not very hard for them to hit, wild swine can produce 2 litters of 7 to 13 piglets, each within a 12 to 15 month period. In Texas alone, this annual birth rate is over 3 million pigs, with local populations estimated to double in size every 4 months, thanks to early sexual maturity at around 6 to 8 months and rapid gestation periods of only 115 days. The most vicious part of their reproduction, however, isn't just the numbers. The way wild boars mate and fight for mates really shows why their wild first name fits so perfectly. At the start of the breeding season, males grow a thick layer of tissue under their skin, followed by a winter coat of long, coarse bristles. Both of these developments protect vital organs from what's about to come. Once mating begins, solitary males who had left their sounders at around 8 months return to these female-dominated groups after traveling long distances, competing fiercely with other contenders. As the fights erupt, apart from ramming and stabbing each other, these vicious beasts bite the penises off of their rivals to rule them out of the competition. By the end of the mating season, a dominant male may have mated with 5 to 10 females, but loses about 20% of its body weight, and is often found in extremely rough shape, carrying several injuries, mostly on the penis from rival bites. Apart from their own kind, the biggest threat to these wild swines comes from apex predators from different regions across the world. Wolves, tigers, bears, leopards, Komodo dragons, wild dogs, and even somewhat smaller cats like the Eurasian lynx are all known to feed heavily on wild boars. A wolf, for example, can kill and eat around 80 boars of all ages in a single year, especially in areas where heavy snow slows the boars down. Similarly, leopards and wild dogs hunt these giant pigs to keep their numbers in check within their habitats. However, when tigers and bears enter this picture, things get a little unexpected. Both of these apex predators feed on wild boars as a major part of their diets across their ranges, which of course isn't too shocking. What is shocking, though, is that wild boars, being several times smaller and obviously far less skilled at hunting and combat than these top-chain predators, can sometimes turn the tables and actually kill tigers and bears. One famous incident occurred in Georgia's Okefenokee Swamp in the 1920s, where a feral boar reportedly killed a black bear in a vicious fight. Several similar accounts come from the 1880s in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, where boars were said to have killed bears during fights. Even more so, Volume 2 of the Mammals of the Soviet Union series describes a rare incident of wild boars goring both a tiger and a tigress that were trying to prey on them. Not only that, a 1980 research article mentions a brutal showdown between a large male tiger and an old wild boar. The fight was so savage that both animals ended up dead from the injuries they inflicted on each other. Which I believe is way more honorable than having your dick chopped off in an attempt to have sex. I mean, who does that? Pigs? Oh, yeah. No, yes. They are pigs. I mean, all right, I'm going to get going. See you guys. Bye.